If you are struggling to feel motivated in your coaching business, you're probably finding it really difficult to show up and actually get results. In this episode of the Wholehearted Business Show, we're going to explore some key things that you can try, some new things that you can do to help you stay motivated so that you can make your coaching business a big success. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses, and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about how do we stay motivated when we are starting, building, and growing a coaching business. This is a really common challenge that we have, not only as coaches, but just for anyone who's running their own businesses. And I think sometimes simply the fact that we are doing this often alone without external accountability, it's not like an employed job where you have a boss that you have to report to. Like, you have to be internally motivated, and sometimes if you're not used to what that looks like, it can be really challenging. So in this episode of the show today, we're going to explore some different things that you can think about, some different things that you can try and do, some specific examples of what you can actually put into practice in your business that will hopefully help you feel more motivated. So the first thing that you can do to help you stay motivated in your coaching business is just by getting really clear on why you are doing this. Sounds really simple, but it's very common for us to kind of lose sight of like the big reason, the big draw, the big thing that is pulling us into wanting to make our coaching business successful. Really tapping into that, really connecting with that, especially at the start, can be so important for helping you push through and keep on showing up again and again when it inevitably will get tough. So actually having that really strong connection with why it is that you're doing this. What is it about running a coaching business that excites you? What is it about running a coaching business that is going to change your life? What is it about running a coaching business that is going to help you change other people's lives? Like, think about what is really being the motivation for you. What is going to get you out of bed on a morning to show up at your laptop and do this? What is going to motivate you to push through when you kind of know that it's something that you could do, but you don't really want to do it and you're a bit blocked and you just need that little push? Like, what is it going to be? What are those thoughts going to be that is going to help you show up day after day after day? Because we need that. If we're going to do this coaching business thing, it is not easy. It's not, or else everyone would be doing it. It is a calling for a lot of us to start and run a coaching business, and it's something that's very individual and personal. So I'm a big believer in getting really clear on what that looks like, writing it down somewhere and looking back at it often is so important. And like, when I connect with my why for my coaching business, it's kind of spiraled out from being this thing where, when I first trained as a coach, I just wanted to help others go through something like what I'd been through. I'd been through this massive transformation in terms of my health, and I really wanted to support other people to do that themselves. And then as that grew, it kind of expanded and it became about being able for me to create the life that I wanted to create, being able to be available and around my children, not having to answer to anybody else in terms of like my job situation, and it's kind of spiraled out from that place to be about the impact that I get to create through helping other coaches who then go on to help others. So it's all these things interconnected that really light me up and that get me showing up every morning to work on my coaching business, to grow my coaching business. I also personally am at that point now, and I kind of joke to people that I'm kind of unemployable because I don't feel like I could ever go back to a kind of traditional job. I've been doing this now for 12 years and working for myself for, pretty much 12 years now. And I could not go back into that. So that's quite a big motivating factor for me, is that I just can't ever imagine myself going back into that kind of situation. But again, it's going to look very different for everyone. Everyone has different things that motivate them to show up, and it's really about finding yours. Now, if you struggle to find the big why, it's okay to like reevaluate whether or not running a coaching business is actually the right thing for you. There's no rules that say that this is the right thing for everybody and that this is the pinnacle of success for everybody's life at all. You might get into this and think, well, actually, this is not quite right for me, and that's okay too. But really connecting with that big why, the reason that you want to keep on showing up, is so helpful when you need to kind of push through, when you are finding that the motivation is flagging, because it inevitably will. That's just part of life. It's part of, doing something over a long period of time, is that motivation is going to wax and wane, and it's about finding what is going to help you push through when it starts to wane. The next tip is to reset your expectations. Sometimes when we get demotivated, it's because we are expecting results that we're just not quite in the place to get yet. And again, that's really normal. There will be times in your coaching business when you feel disheartened. Even the most successful coaches do not have success, like linear success, all of the time. There will be launches that flop. There will be things that go wrong. There will be challenges with clients. There'll be all sorts of different things. And I think part of the motivational piece of this is just reminding yourself that it's normal for things not to always be this kind of linear path towards success, and that you're going to have ups and downs. I think when you don't expect that, and when you kind of have the expectation for everything to just be working out really well and to be getting clients really easily and your income to be growing really easily, like it can feel really demotivating when that doesn't happen. But it's not necessarily normal for that to happen. We just get that sense from what everyone is talking about online that it should be the case that we have this overnight success. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't be in a really positive mindset, because this is where things kind of get a bit more fluid when it comes to kind of like the energetics of it. I'm a big believer in really aiming high when it comes to the results that you want to get for your coaching business, and actually like embodying that and really feeling into that success. So there is a bit of a balance here between kind of being realistic about your expectations but also kind of not expecting nothing either. There's a middle ground there. And I think sometimes a good way to think about this is detachment. So this can be a really powerful, energetic tool to use if you feel like your motivation is very, very attached to the results that you get. And actually, when you become detached from those outcomes, but still hold the energetic space for success, I know that sounds really tricky, but it is possible, then you are much, much more likely to stay motivated, because your motivation is not connected to necessarily the results that you get. And there's another tip that we're going to talk about that is linked into this. But if you notice that your motivation is very heavily connected to that, then this could be a really good thing to practice. The next tip is to have a plan. Sometimes when you're struggling with motivation, it's because you simply don't know what you're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis to make your coaching business grow. Obviously, a massive fan of planning. It doesn't necessarily have to be the be-all and end-all for everybody. Some people can operate really, really well without a plan. But I feel that when you have a plan in your business, you know what is coming, you know what you're working on, you know, like logically that when I do this, it is designed to help me get this result. That can be really motivational, can help you show up. When you can't connect the dots, and often this happens when you are trying to like retrofit someone else's apparent strategy. You're kind of looking at what someone else is doing but don't really understand the mechanics of it. Sometimes this can happen and you can't really join up the dots in terms of like, if I do these actions, then that should lead to that result. And I think when you can't do that in terms of what it is that you do and you don't really understand the mechanics of it, then it can feel really demotivating. But when you can understand, like, yes, when I show up and do these videos on YouTube, this is all the different ways that it's going to benefit my business. It kind of motivates you to take action. Again, when you connect all these pieces together back to that big why, you know that you want to get the result of your big why, and you can kind of have a plan to say, well, this is going to help me get to the point where I'm starting to fulfill that and reach that place. It's just really, really helpful to have a plan on so many levels. It means that you're never sitting down and just looking at your laptop thinking, well, what should I be working on right now? Because the plan should kind of keep you on track and keep you informed in terms of what it is that you're focusing on. So I think having a plan can be such a motivating thing, just in terms of like knowing that the tasks that you're actually doing are designed to get results. So you've got a strategy there, but also just in terms of not feeling too overwhelmed, of always knowing what you should be doing, all of that can be really, really motivational. The next tip is to reward yourself. This is one of my favourite ones, and one that I'm not actually very good at doing, but it's such an important one. And I am going to try and use this episode of the show as a reminder for myself to do this more. Now, this is where you build in rewards for yourself as you do things in your coaching business. Now, the key with this is going back to when we were talking about the tip in terms of being really attached to the outcomes and, adjusting our expectations. This is where we reward ourselves, yes, based on the actual things, the actual results that we get, but also we reward ourselves on the effort that we're putting in and the action that we're taking. So when we reward ourselves, we're creating that positive feedback loop in our brains in terms of, we show up, we feel good, these good things happen. Like that's kind of where we want to get to in our coaching business. So rewarding our effort as well as our results is a really good way to do that. Now, that doesn't have to mean that it's expensive. It can be, giving yourself the afternoon off to just sit and binge watch Netflix if that feels good to you. It can be, having a walk around the block at the end of the day. Whatever feels good to you, whatever feels like a treat, whatever feels like a reward, that can be really, really useful to just build that into the way that you show up. And again, like if you have that plan, You can build that in when you reach a certain milestone or when you do something that's difficult. I'm a big believer as well, like when we do hard things, as again, we will be doing in our coaching business, we will be required to do hard things, is to actually recognize that we have done a hard thing. I think it's so important to do that because, again, we can just skip through life moving from one thing to the next and not actually sitting with the amazingness of what we've done. And that can just be doing a hard thing. Like if you've done a hard thing, if you like set up that Facebook ad that was driving you crazy, if you've, done that launch that felt really scary, if you've reached out to that, that person who emailed you and invited them to a discovery call, like if you've done something that feels hard, recognize that and perhaps reward it as well. If you have a limited company in the UK, this is something I've just recently learned about, but don't take this as financial advice by a long shot. But if you are a limited company in the UK, you can use up to £300 in trivial benefits, which basically means I think it can be up to £50 per trivial benefit. And I'm going to start using my trivial benefit to like give myself little rewards throughout the year when I do hard things and when I get good results. So there's different ways that you can work this in, and that's just one way that you can do that if you're in the UK. I'm not sure what the tax rules are in other places, but find ways to do that. Like I say, whether or not it's paid things, whether or not it's treating yourself to a little gift or a little voucher, or whether or not it's just simple as like taking time off. Maybe it's like going to the spa, maybe it's having a massage, like whatever feels like wonderful to you, then do that. It's such a great way to create that positive feedback loop in your mind. I would also say, if your brain is challenging this right now, as my brain sometimes just like, well, why should I be rewarded for doing this? Like, why is like, challenge that. Like, again, this is about creating that positive feedback loop. I honestly believe when I look at my clients and the things that they're doing in their lives and businesses, like it is extraordinary. Like it takes a certain level of bravery and like courage to show up and do business in this way and be a coach. And I think we all deserve to be rewarded. So it's a nice thing to think about. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing if your brain kind of challenges you on this, to unpack that a little bit. Like, why do you not think that you deserve to have a little reward when you've done something that's hard? Challenge those thoughts. Again, this is another way that you can really like manage burnout potentially as well. So reward yourself, whatever that looks like. It can be really, really positive for your mindset and for your motivation as well. The next tip is to find a support network. So if you are, as most people are, doing this coaching business thing on your own, it is really important that you find some kind of support network. It can be an exceptionally lonely road if you don't have others who are in the industry or who have an understanding of this kind of work, because honestly, a lot of people who are not in this space just will not get it. They just will not get it. And that can really damage your motivation, and it can just really have a negative impact. So finding some kind of support network, whether that's people that you've trained with as a coach that you can kind of connect with on like a peer-to-peer basis, whether or not it's joining a mastermind, whether or not it's joining a group program like Wholehearted Business that I have, that won't be reopening until September, but maybe earmark that for September. Whether or not it's been in a Facebook group full of people, like whatever it is, whatever you find that, paid or free or peer-led or whatever, like, or whether or not you work with a mentor one-to-one or a coach one-to-one, like find a support network. It is going to make a big difference, particularly if you do not have people in your life who get it, because it's going to be hard and you're going to want to have people who will pick you up on those hard days. It's really normal for people who love you, who are not in this online space, to just be like, well, on a bad day, it'd be like, well, just go and look for another job. It's all right. Why don't you just go and look for a job? And that's all well and true. And that might be really good advice. But sometimes that's not actually helpful. And it's not taken into consideration that these are sometimes the normal ups and downs of running a business. So find people who get it, find a support network. Sometimes part of that support network needs to be a little bit of accountability. I know this is especially relevant if previously you have been in a role where you've been like heavily kind of motivated by having to show up for a boss or a manager. You've kind of had those accountability systems built in. So your motivation in showing up has been in response to like external things. when we are starting to run our own businesses, that motivation has to be internal. Now, if you think about your work as a coach, you probably will work with clients in some way, shape or form around elements of this anyway. If you think about any kind of like health outcome or any habit change, often what we're doing is we're trying to find ways for our clients to find that internal motivation to keep them showing up sustainably over time. It's no different when you're running a coaching business. So that can be a helpful way to think about it if this is something that you struggle with. Like, how can you support yourself to create those accountability systems and to generate that internal motivation, because you're not necessarily going to have it externally unless, again, you opt into something, you kind of find a space that is going to provide that for you. It's really worth thinking about what that looks like for you. Something else that you can be aware of when it comes to staying motivated is to overcome your inbuilt negativity bias. And what I mean by that is our brains, I'm not a psychotherapist or by any means, but our brains are wired to pick up the negative things more than the positive. That's because our brains are wired to keep us safe, and our brains are constantly perceiving things that are threats, that are, that might not make us feel safe, all of those different things. And because of that, our brains will lean a little bit to the negative. And when you're in a coaching business and when you're running a coaching business, that is obviously not helpful. That we're going to be kind of like focusing on the negative stuff. And obviously it's going to have an impact on how motivated we feel. So one of the things that I like to do is to kind of counteract that and just do that in quite an intentional way. And it can be as simple as just practicing gratitude, sitting down and writing a gratitude list. It can be as simple as getting to the end of the day and just recognizing the progress that you've made. Again, this is a really big one when it comes to motivation. Often we think, well, I've done nothing really this week on my coaching business. I feel like I've done nothing. But actually, when you sit down and intentionally look at what you have done, you will see that you have actually done a lot. And again, that supports those feelings that are underneath what is going to make you motivated to continue to show up. So being aware that we have this negativity bias and doing things that are very specifically designed to counteract that. It's not about toxic positivity. It's not about, just kind of glossing over the negative side of life, because that exists. It's about counterbalancing it. So we're not kind of forgetting about the stuff that, the things that we might need to address at some point in our coaching business that feel uncomfortable, things that are connected to feeling shame, embarrassment, judgment, like all of that kind of stuff, that shadow work stuff. We're not glossing over that at all. But what we are doing, especially on a motivational day-to-day basis, is we are putting in something intentionally to recognise where we are making progress, where we are doing things that are positive, where we are, feeling good from our businesses, but really looking at that, and we're doing that intentionally just to counterbalance the fact that we are going to be focusing on the negative, because that's just how our brains work. So again, that can be like a gratitude practice. It can be at the end of the day or the end of the week, just thinking, right, this is what I've actually done. This is the way that I've moved things forward. I'm really happy with that. It's just as simple as that. It's just as simple as looking at the things that you're doing. Again, the rewards really comes into this, because that's another way that we address that negativity bias, is by actually factoring that in. So think about all of these things, all of these different tips that I've just shared, all these different things that you can try and different ways you can think about things, and then put them together so that you have your own kind of motivational medicine, if you like, because everyone's going to be different, and what helps one person show up is not necessarily going to be helpful for the other. So really identifying, like, what is it that you need? Like, do you need a lot of accountability from someone? Do you need a lot of support from other people who get it? Is that really important for you? Or is the rewards thing actually really going to motivate you? Is that the thing that's going to get you out of bed in the morning? Is knowing that, like, if I show up and post on Instagram every day this month, I'm going to take myself out for a coffee and a pastry at the end of the month, like, what's going to help you show up? It's going to be very unique to you. So my invitation for the end of this episode is to think, what is my motivational medicine? What do I need to do in my coaching business, recognizing as well that you are doing something that is courageous and brave just by the fact that you are doing this, just by the fact that you are showing up and trying to run a business and growing a business and supporting people and helping people through your work. That in its own right is courageous. You need these things in place to support yourself. So think about what that looks like for you. I'd absolutely love for you to share that with me. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave in the comments what your own motivational medicine is. If you're listening on the podcast, you can DM me on Instagram. I'm at wholeheartedlylaura, and tell me there as well. I'd love to know what resonates with you from this episode and what you're going to try, what you're going to start doing that is going to reinforce your motivation and how you show up in your coaching business. I really hope that's been helpful, everyone. As always, I'll be back next week with more tips for growing a successful health and life coaching business, and I will catch you then. Take care. Bye.